welcome to Steve McDonald's Crafting, and today, I'm sure you can see, I'm going to be doing another abstract picture. I really enjoyed doing the last one, and I've got it up, and I just thought I'd have another go at doing another one, but I'm going to do it slightly different. I'm going to do a kind of background image, and then once I've done the background image, I'm going to mask some bits off and kind of go from there. So the background is what I have here. We'll be showing through the mask. And I'm not sure if you saw recently, I did a picture on a book cover. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it at the end here, where I made a TARDIS sketchbook cover. And I'm going to do the background of this one with the mica powder scattering over to see what I think and how well it comes out as an actual picture. I need this paint that I put on to start with, and I'm going to be using a white paint. I need this to dry slower than acrylic paints would normally dry, because I want the mica powders to kind of be in there and be absorbed into the paint and then dry. I've got this fluid retarder, and this will make the paint last a lot longer in its wet state. You can't put more than 25% in, because if not, it might not ever dry. And I'm going to mix that up in just this little yogurt pot that I've got here. You know me, I keep all my yogurt pots. And that's going to be more than enough white, and I don't need to overdo this. And that will be more than enough of fluid retarder. And it is easy to get hold of. I will link it in the description, don't worry. So I'm going to give that a good stir in. Make sure that is well absorbed into there. And now I'm going to give a good coating over the top of this canvas. Making sure that I get to all the edges as well. I'm not going to go down the sides at this stage. I'm going to sprinkle on my mica powder into the wet paint. That's the gold, and I did it from quite a height. I didn't do it from a low down because I want it to kind of spread out like it is now. This is an ocean blue. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black in it because I want to try and get the contrast going on. When I say a tiny bit, I mean like that. And then the last colour I'm going to be using is a reddy pinky colour. Now remember, once this dries, we are going to lose quite a bit of this mica powder. It's not all going to stay on there like this. I'm going to put another little bit of gold on because I seem to have lost the gold quite a lot, and I want to make sure that I've got enough gold coming through. The paint isn't dry yet, as you can see, so as that dries, hopefully it's going to absorb a bit of that mica powder into it, and then once that's done, I will then show you what I'm going to do next. So this is all nice and dry now, and I'm really pleased with what it's looking like. But obviously, because I'm going to be painting over the top of this mica powder is still going to be fragile. And if I tap it, as you can see, some mica powder will come off. So I need to seal this to prevent anything else happening to the mica powder when I put the rest of the paint on and when I do the technique that I'm going to be looking to do. What I'm going to use to seal this with is a clear acrylic varnish, which seals and protects, and I'm going to use this one. There are quite a few out there. Now I am going to put my extractor fan on behind me to allow that any fumes to be out. I've also got the door open, but I'm also going to be wearing a mask as well while I spray, because I'm spraying indoors because it's raining outside, and this is the mask that I'm going to be wearing.
I have to accept my apology for the fact that I now sound like I'm really muffled. So I'm not going to talk through the rest of it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a shake and then a light spray over the top, and then I'll let that dry for an hour, and then I'll give it another light spray over the top of that.
Well, this is all dry now, and as you can see, the mica powder is all nicely firmly set in there. There might be a few bits in there that aren't completely permanently set, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm now going to mask some of this off using this blue painter's tape. And make sure that's nicely down there. I've got nothing really set in my head of how I want this to look, other than I want to have some straight lines going across. What I do find is that whenever you're using something to mask off with, it's always a good idea to ensure that it's actually well adhered. So go along it with your fingers and make sure those edges are really nicely put down. And I will, like I said, I'll always link everything that I can in the description below. Well, I've got this masked off now as much as I can mask it off, and hopefully all these bits are nice and down. I'm going to stick to the same colours that I've used here. So I've got red, gold, black and a blue. And I'm going to put those onto the canvas first in blobs and then move it around. And then I'm going to use something on the top of that to try and give it a little bit of texture as well. Now this is going to cover up most of this mica powder, and hopefully only the bits that are under the tape are going to show through. I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not. It's just an experiment, but we'll see. Got my paint on there, as you can see. I've just popped it in blobs, and I'm not going to, hopefully I'm not going to overwork it, but I'm using quite a large spatula here, and I'm going to bring it around. But I do want to ensure that I cover all the bits. And if I need to put some more on, that's not a problem. And I'll know exactly how and where the tape is, because obviously I've wrapped it around the sides of the canvas. And that will allow me to see where the tape is, to be able to get that off when I need to get it off. I'm just going to add a few more bits up here because it just doesn't seem to be enough. And then a bit of dark blue. I'm going to pop some dark blue in it in other places. And a little bit more red. Now I'm going to give it some kind of highlight places using a little bit more white, and I'm going to use this . I'm going to take some normal tin foil, aluminium foil or aluminum foil. I'm going to crunch it up, and now I'm going to go over it because this is how I want to try and give it some like texture to get it to come up as well. And now, just in a few places, I'm going to go in with my smaller knives, give it some additional, not just all a stipple. And I'm going to let that dry up for a little bit, and then I'm going to pull the tape off. Because I'm not sure whether you should pull the tape off when it's completely dry or while it's still wet. If anyone does know, then, or has an idea on it, let me know in the comments. That'd be really useful to know. But my concern is if I pull the tape off now, it's too wet and it's just going to make it a mess. And if I let it dry too much, then when I pull the tape off, it's going to crack. Hopefully it's not going to turn out a complete and absolute ugly disaster. Okay, so I'm going to take the risk now and see if this is going to come off, and if it does, how well it comes off. It is still quite wet, but I'm okay with that at the moment. These thinner bits will come off a lot easier than the larger bits, I think.
Ooh, it's quite nerve-wracking.
What I want to do is also try and keep my fingers as clean as possible so I don't mess it up when I go over it with dirty fingers. And I know I put all the thinner ones on last, so they'll be easier to come off. They're not under the thicker ones. Well, that's what I'm hoping anyway. And they are coming off quite easily, and they're coming off, and it is leaving quite nice, neat lines, which is what I was hoping for. And then once this is fully dry, I'll probably give it 2 or 3 days to fully dry, because I want this to be quite a glossy finish to it. And I know abstract art isn't, or abstract pictures aren't everyone's cup of tea. I actually really do like it. I think it's nice, I think it's fun. Well, this is all nice and dry now, and as you can see, it's quite matte. So having a coat of resin on this will really make this pop. It will pop out and be lovely and glossy. The only trouble is, when you've done a painting on canvas, resin is quite heavy, and you want to put a thick enough layer on it to ensure that you've got a good coating. So what it will create is, it will create dips. Can you see how this is dipping in? So you need to prep your canvas to ensure that that dipping isn't going to happen. And how I do that is, I just turn over my canvas like so. I take out the middle bar, and I use a piece of foam board. This is just the foam board that you can get. Is so cheap, and it will make such a massive difference. It's really fairly easy to do. You need to take this as tight as possible into your actual canvas itself, so into the actual frame. And how I do that is, I cut this down, I make sure it's square in there, I get into there like this, and then I will cut this down to the exact size. Depending on whether the canvas itself is square or not, and often they are not, that actually isn't too bad, that end. But as you can see, that end, it is very off. Look. So there's no point me cutting it square across there, because you're not going to get a nice tight edge. Cut this down, so this should now fit as a really snug fit into this canvas. Now, if you can see here, this bit here is a little bit bowed on this canvas, so I do need to take out a little bit on there. So I will just do the adjustments as I go on the fly, so to speak, and get that round so that will fit in. Now, if you've got a really big canvas, then you might need to use 2 of these boards. And then what I do is, I've got my canvas flat, and that's how flat I want it to be. I will just push that down. I will go over that with some clear tape, give it an extra bit of security. And I will go round my whole canvas. Once I'm happy with that being flush, and I'll show you when I turn it over. I leave this in. There is no need to remove this backing at all from your canvas. It will keep your canvas in good shape. It will stop it warping, and it will stop any dints coming in. Now, when I showed this quite a while back, oh, I got so much grief about it. Oh, you shouldn't be using canvases. It will rot with the resin and it will warp. And believe me, I've got canvases that are several years old. They've not rotted, they've not warped in any way, shape or form, and they are still as perfect as the date I did them. If you don't agree with my method, that's absolutely 100% fine. You don't have to agree with my method. It works for me. And what you'll see is now that it's flat and it's not bending anywhere. So when you put your resin on, you aren't going to get dips and bits and all that sort of stuff going on. Now, if you don't want to get any drips and things, you can go around the edge of your canvas as well with some tape. But do you know what? I don't mind the drips. I can sometimes think they're quite pretty. So that's all nicely prepared, and as you can see, that's nice and flat, and that is going to be rigid enough to ensure there are no dips in that. So the support can now go back on, even though it's a little bit more rigid there than it was before, but you can still put the support back on, and if you want to, you can just use the same staples. That will just help prevent your canvas even more doing any warping, and it will also keep this nice and tight in place. And that isn't going to affect in any way, shape or form that. Now the other thing that I would recommend, if you've used an acrylic paint that has an awful lot of silicone in it, then go over this with some alcohol first and try and clean off any silicone in the surface of your paint, because that will repel the resin when you put it on. So if you want to see how I'm going to cover this, then check it out on my other channel, and I will put the link to that in the description and in the comments section so you can easily find it. But I will show you what it looks like once it's been coated in resin. Look how nice and firm that is now. Oh, that's lovely. Well, it's all finished now, and the resin's all over it, and it really has made this picture pop, I think, and brought out all the colours in it. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Now, if you want to know how I got this lovely even coat of resin all over the top of this picture to make it pop, then check out my resin channel. I'll link the video at the end of this one. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee just to say thank you for any of my videos, then the link for that is in the description below, and it gets your name on my coffee board for next month. Take care, enjoy your crafting, bye.